Hey guys, welcome back to another impressions video on a fighting game I beat recently, and that game is Samurai Showdown. I played this via Google Stadia. This is one of the launch games for the service for those that decided to go with the Pro subscription or membership. The game was released in 2019, and as I mentioned, it was a launch game for Pro subscriber of Stadia around November of 2019. And at first, I remember obviously playing this game. I got Stadia on day one with the Founders Edition, and I remember playing Samurai Showdown on my Chromebook laptop. And I remember the game had some issues, some lag and connection issues that made the game not the optimal way to do it, since it's a fighting game, right? But now that I revisited the game, I don't know what triggered the idea of going back. I just decided to kind of go back to the game, and now that I played it, recently, the game played completely normally. So I think Stadia made some improvements as far as the service and the performance versus launch. The launch days, which is almost a year ago already. But the game played completely normally. A very minor loss of quality. I played this while other people were streaming TV shows in the house, and obviously Stadia is a streaming service, so it was a very impressive, performance of the game with extremely low latency. Like, I would have never known I was streaming a fighting game, which was, in my opinion, like the most impressive thing on my experience with this game via the Stadia version. Now for the story, each character that you can choose in the game has its own story mode and I guess their own agenda. That it's either told by introduction story cutscenes that are followed by unique dialogue in between fights, and with an unique ending scene for each character. This obviously pertains to the story mode, which is what I focused on for this impressions or review of the game. Basically, evil is engulfing Japan, and the body of a young woman is possessed and it's pretty much set on destroying Japan. So it's up to the character that you have chosen to stop this. I was a little bit afraid because I've heard a lot of different things about the difficulty of the last boss. Thankfully, I did not struggle that much. I only died, or I only had to repeat it like 2 or 3 times. I played this on the regular or default difficulty, and I focused on using Galford as my character. But yeah, that's basically the story in a nutshell. And then focusing on the graphics department. The development team of King of Fighters 14 and SNK Heroines are the ones that were tasked with the development of this game. But the cool thing is that they've used the Unreal Engine 4 for the first time to improve the graphics. So when you compare this to those games that I mentioned, like King of Fighters 14, the graphics are much more improved and crisp, and just an overall improvement. And this is definitely the best looking 3D SNK fighter game to date, in my opinion. The graphics are excellent. There are great facial expressions. When you look at the characters, beautiful backgrounds in certain stages are just fantastic and gorgeous looking. And again, like I said before, this is definitely the best looking 3D fighter by SNK to date, at least. Each character model is very detailed and colorful. There are some good effects from the weapons that you use, and a lot of attention to detail with things like blood stains in the clothing of the characters as they are fighting. On the sound department, pretty good soundtrack and pretty good sound effects, with the occasional voice acting and dialogue for the story mode. Nothing to write home about, but overall a solid thumbs up from my end for the sound department of this game. Now, of course, gameplay, that's where it's what makes or break a fighting game. And this is the area where Samurai Showdown greatly impressed me. First of all, as far as the performance, 60 frames per second. The Stadia version runs silky butter smooth. Not sure about the other versions of the game. Not sure about the Switch version, which is kind of like technically the low performance version. I haven't really played that, but the Stadia version runs great, and I'm assuming the PS4 and Xbox versions are the same as well. There are 16 characters to use in the game, with more DLC unlockable characters. There are obviously the return of classic characters such as Haomaru, Galfor, which uses his trusty dog companion Poppy, Earthquake, which is the big tank character, Nakaruru with her eagle, companion, Kiyoshiro, etc. And of course there are new fighters that were added on top of those from the previous Samurai Showdown games. I played this for the most part with Galford. I have a lot of fond memories. I remember going to the arcades, in the 90s, and my older brother, he wasn't big into fighting games, but he liked Samurai Showdown. I remember the whole fact about each character had its own unique weapons, and I remember my older brother used to play with Galfor, so I decided to go with him for the story mode. But I also beat this game with Kiyoshiro, and I plan to go back and definitely beat the story mode with other characters, because it was just so much fun to play and get to know each character and the use of their respective weapons in more detail. And as you guys know, I pretty much enjoy the more traditional fighting games, and this game has a more traditional fighting game approach as opposed to some other modern fighting games, in the sense that this game has a less focus on very long combos and more focus on things like spacing and executing attacks at the right time. You have the low slash, medium slash, and heavy slash combinations that you can do with your weapons. And of course, if you use a heavy slash, it's a very slow movement, but it deals a ton of damage. But at the same time, if you miss your heavy slash attack, you pretty much leave yourself exposed to the opponent, and they can deal a great damage. So spacing is very important, and timing. You have to know when to maintain your distance, when to be aggressive, when to attack, when to defend. Some of the fights can be incredibly methodical. But again, I did not master this game completely. There are other techniques that I should have spent more time in the tutorials to learn these techniques. I kind of employ the traditional classic Street Fighter gameplay approach, if you will. That's how I call it, where I was just blocking attacks. But there are more advanced techniques where you can actually deflect attacks and do other things that are a little bit more in depth, and I'll probably go back and try and learn those mechanics just to get a little bit more out of the game. Obviously your character has regular attacks, but also special or combat moves, if you will. And of course you have the super special attacks, if you will, which deal a great ton of damage, and they have like a fantastic looking cinematic sequences. I know Galford had an incredibly fun to watch super special attack that I enjoyed using anytime I could in the battles. And the game has also other features like filling up a rage meter to deal more damage, among other things. I did not play this online, so I cannot vouch for how good or bad the internet, the net code was for this game, but I don't really care for online. I know that's a big component for fighting games and fighting game enthusiasts, but I'm super old school when it comes to fighting games. I'm a story mode type of guy, and that's it, which is goes along with me not trying the other modes. I think there's a dojo mode where you can just have like quick fights against the CPU, and I believe there's also like a time attack type of mode where you fight your own ghosts and things like that. Those are pretty cool features, in the sense of extending the replay value of the game. But again, for me, it was story mode. That's all I cared and played, and I plan to going back in order to unlock the the other cutscenes for the story mode for the other characters. So overall, my impressions on this game are incredibly good. I think this is a very solid fighting game. For me nowadays, it's harder these days for me to be surprised by a fighting game, and I typically find myself playing classic fighting games like Street Fighter 2 or the older King of Fighter games from the Orochi Saga era, for example, or the occasional, Garou Mark of the Wolves. But I can see myself going back to this 2019 Samurai Showdown fighting game again. I think it deals a great, legacy to, this is a well-known fighting franchise, maybe not in the same ranks of Street Fighter, Fatal Fury or King of Fighters in terms of popularity, but I think this game does the legacy of the Samurai Showdown games pretty good, and puts the name of the series in a very, very high place. So I was very, very impressed by this game. Highly recommend it if you guys are into fighting games. So that's it for now. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Thank you for watching, and I will see you all later. Take it easy.